heavyweight doubleheader that ESPN hosted Saturday, April 13th turned out to be a 50% card that gave audiences what they wanted. Now the other 50% we'll discuss at another time. But the 50 that I'm speaking of, Ajagba against Guido Vianello, turned to be a heavyweight clash of titans and men who were willing to put it all on the line. Whatever the vulnerabilities may have been, these two men were able to show us exactly what they were made of. And so we'll talk about Ajagba and Vianello and what might be next. Hopefully a rematch. Yeah. The heavyweight division. How do you like your action when you talk about the big boys in boxing? Well, I'll tell you something. On Saturday, April 13th, ESPN Top Rank Boxing brought us two giants that really laid it on the line. And I'm talking about when Ajagba took on Guido Vianello, one part of a heavyweight doubleheader that was featured on this card. These two men who were very familiar with one another, equal in height and age, not so equal in reach as Vianello with his 78 to 79 inch reach compared to Efe's 85 inch reach. But both men brought something that we love to see in boxing, and that is the exchange of leather. They were throwing punches, and I have to salute Guido Vianello because he took the fight to Ajagba early. While the announcers were calling this fight, they failed to see that he got out of the blocks very early against Ajagba. And I do believe it's because they were looking at Ajagba as the favor in the fight and were waiting for him to get established. But one thing was established early by Vianello, and that was to attack Ajagba and not allow him to uncork that 85 inch reach and jab. That is one of his strongest points in fighting. These two men were right there. There was not a lot of laying on the ropes. There was not a lot of hugging and mugging, plotting and pondering. They were throwing, missing sometimes, but landing oftentimes as well. Surprisingly, neither fighter suffered any bad cuts, as we know that a few fights ago against Jonathan Rice, Vianello had a terrible cut opened up over his left eye. And fortunately, it didn't open up in this fight. But Ajagba had damage around his right eye where it was starting to swell shut. One of the things I liked about the action between these two men was the ebb and flow of the action. They were giving it to one another in a way that sometimes you just notice that the fighters don't usually adjust to that very well. But in this fight, they seemingly got accustomed to one another's power. And I think that's because they are familiar. They've sparred numerous times, even as recent as in the fourth quarter of 2023. But on this night, there was no sparring. On this night, these two men were hammering out their differences, and it was exciting to witness. I noticed that Ajagba seemingly was surprised by Vianello's aggression. And I do believe it was after the second round, Ajagba was hurt by some shots from Guido and was up against the ropes, and the bell saved him. And coming out for the third, Guido did try to test him early, but he weathered the storm and enough to go on and win the third round in my eyes. But it was on at that point, and these two men were gallantly showing us what we like about the sport of boxing. Scheduled for only 10 rounds. At the midpoint, Ajagba was able to turn southpaw and began to land uppercuts and shots that Guido wasn't expecting, possibly because he maybe didn't turn southpaw in the gym. Having that bit of a different look kind of bought Ajagba some time, because there were moments in this fight where Vianello was imposing himself, and F.A. seemed to be in awe of that. What I did like was, though I didn't like him turning southpaw, I liked the fact that he was trying something a little bit different, and he found uppercuts. Neither guy produced body work. Body work could have made the difference for all involved. And it's unfortunate because the lack of body work meant that you could rest a little bit and then come back and get your wind back. And that did happen, because Vianello in the middle rounds seemingly was so tired he was leaning into Ajagba in some moments, waiting for the ref to break, and he was heaving quite heavily as the fight was going on. I enjoyed this action. These are the type of fights, like we see these guys featured on ESPN, and they're typically beating up on journeymen and guys who really shouldn't be in the ring with them. But I've always questioned, what will happen when you put these type of fighters in against one another and they can show exactly what they have? So Ajagba comes out of this with a unanimous decision. A split decision victory, where two judges had it for he and one judge had it for Vianello. Personally, his record now 20-1 with 14 KOs means that he can continue forward as a contender and hopefully look for a title shot at some point. Vianello, whose record now drops to 12-2 with 1 draw and 10 KOs, is deserving of something too. Because even though This fight ended up to be a close split decision victory for Ajagba. It could have quite easily gone the other way. I actually had it a draw. I may not have had the same rounds as the judges, but I noticed that Guido had implemented a Sugar Ray Leonard-like strategy and tactic of attacking Ajagba at certain moments near the end of rounds. And that gave him, in some instances, the opportunity to steal the round, which was pretty cool, because even if he was languishing earlier in the round, he found some kind of extra push to go out there and just give it his all and steal the last 15 to 20 seconds of a round with activity. You don't see that from the big guys a lot. It's very interesting and a little humorous to see that. But man, I respect both fighters for doing what they did. They accomplished what they set out to do, and that was to engage and be entertaining. And boy, were they both that. What about a rematch between these two men? That would be something that I'd like to see as well, because this was the type of fight that, because of the way they fought one another, there was no loser here. These two men are winners, and I would love to see them mix it up again before someone moves on toward a title shot. But what do you think? This is Stormy B Man. Shout out to the mighty LDBC and Liberated Perspective, a third eye view of the world. For more content such as this, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Let me know what you think should be next for Efe Ajagba and Guido Vianello. This is the type of fight that you can get behind these guys and have a real appreciation for what they do, because they fight hard. And I know that I appreciate that. You should as well. Leave comments and let's discuss further. Peace to everyone out there, and everyone please remain safe.